Good evening and welcome back. Still processing? You're not alone. Just when you thought we've covered everything, it just keeps going. So we've covered the machine and it seems to be working like Project 2025. So let's take a look at a few of the cogs that power this machine. This is Fit for Brains. Today, we want to focus on the cronies and phonies of appointments that make up the Trump administration, where the deliberate appointment of cabinet members whose primary skill is disrupting the very thing they've been asked to run. Qualifications as a disqualification, if you will. Let's take a look. So there's Kash Patel, previously best known for authoring a children's book about the deep state. Now, the FBI director. I failed to see a connection, but let's dive in. At his pre appointment hearing, Kash Patel said this in his opening statement, and I quote: "The public trust can be restored if there is full transparency, and I am committed to that. Members of Congress have submitted hundreds of questions that have been unanswered by the FBI in recent times. That will not occur if I am confirmed." Let's remember that. To date, the FBI's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein investigations have faced both very public and congressional scrutiny. According to their investigation, there's no client list, there's no organized sex trafficking ring, the redacted redactions, and the scrap bank records, interviews with victims, and the thousands of photos and videos from Epstein's homes, all revealing no additional criminal conspiracies or evidence implicating others except Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Enter the Epstein Files Transparency Act, signed by Donald J. Trump November 19, 2025, and it reads as follows. This act requires the Department of Justice to publish in a searchable and downloadable format all unclassified records, documents, communications, and investigative materials in DOJ's possession that relate to the investigation and prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein. This includes one, materials that relate to Ghislaine Maxwell, two, flight logs and travel records, and three, individuals named or referenced, including government officials, in connection with the investigation and prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein. DOJ is permitted to withhold certain information, such as the personal information of victims and materials that would jeopardize an active federal investigation. Additionally, not later than 15 days after the required publication, DOJ must report to Congress: one, all categories of information released and withheld; two, a summary of any redactions made; and three, a list of all government officials and politically exposed individuals named or referenced in the published materials. To Congress, Patel stated that the FBI would, and I quote, release whatever we are legally permitted to make public, pushing back against the notion that the files that can be legally released show that Epstein trafficked women or girls to anyone other than himself. Now, let's take a trip back to that opening statement Patel made during his confirmation. He also stated, and I quote, "I am committed to working alongside the dedicated men and women alongside the FBI. I will always have their backs because they have the backs of the American people." I'm pretty sure that there are plenty of American people that are very grateful for his support. The dome. Pam Bondi comes to mind. Can you name anyone else? Now we're moving on to RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the little one, not the big one. He is our health secretary who opposes vaccines, loves drinking milk in hot tubs, and declared himself fully resolved from a parasitic infection on his brain that caused memory loss for a time, despite not being a doctor himself. At his pre appointment hearing, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said this in his opening statement. "I have promised President Trump that if confirmed, I will do everything in my power to put the health of America back on track." Well, let's see how we're doing. But first, I couldn't help but notice that RFK Jr., in his opening statement, failed to acknowledge a specific time in American history where America and Americans were on track with their health for him to boastfully say that he is going to put the health of America back on track. Historically, and I'm no health expert, but actual health experts agree that the concept of a singular healthiest era in America is a myth. Past generations faced devastating infectious diseases and a lack of modern medical treatments. Today, Americans live longer overall and benefit from advanced treatments for many historical killers. However, we struggle with widespread chronic diseases tied to modern diets and sedentary lifestyles. And so far, RFK Jr. and the Trump administration have focused their efforts to address matters that deal with massive workforce cuts, which we covered more so in detail in the previous episode, research and grant cancellations, and policy shifts that rework guidance on suggested requirements, and extensive yet controversial vaccine and food safety initiatives. But honestly, what do you expect from a man that suffered from brain fog as a result of a dead pork tapeworm larva in his brain? Perhaps his recollection of an America that was once healthy is a figment of his imagination. This statement was made intentionally as a loaded assertion that provides an empty assessment of what can realistically address and define what being back on track looks like. He is no doctor of food, medicine, health, or even history. However, he is a lawyer. So I suppose the only salad we should be prepared to eat are words. Finally, the last cog we're going to cover in this machine is I know what I don't know, Hegseth. He is a former host for Fox News, now runs the world's largest military. His pre-appointment hearing, Hegseth said this in his opening statement, and I quote, "It is true that I don't have a similar biography to defense secretaries of the last 30 years. But as President Trump told me, we've repeatedly placed people atop the Pentagon with supposedly the right credentials, whether they are retired generals, academics, or defense contractor executives. And where has it gotten us?" Well, Pete, that's a good question. Let's take a review. So, over the last 30 years, that's roughly 1996 to 2026, that's 16 confirmed leaders to be exact. Under these leaders, the range of conflicts mainly covered global operations, counterinsurgencies, and conflicts inherited from predecessors. So, you may recall the war in Afghanistan and the Iraq War both started under the W. Bush era. You may or may not be familiar with the military interventions in Libya and the conflicts with the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq, both under the Obama administration, all managed by seasoned, credentialed military professionals in their own right. So now let's take a look at Pete under his leadership as the Secretary of Defense and War. He texted military strike plans to family. And while on that subject, do you recall Venezuela, where Hegseth ordered the bombing of alleged yet unconfirmed drug smuggling boats and detained their president, where he is currently being held hostage in U.S. court while their oil is being legally relocated? There's also Yemen, where an provoked attack was ordered as a prelude to attacking Iran. Side note, this is also when National Security Advisor Mike Waltz sent an unsuspecting journalist military strike plans utilizing a public media platform. Incidentally, where Hegseth also acknowledged the deliberate nixing of one or more civilian bystanders in this conflict. To his credit, this conflict has ended. But wait, there's more. So there's Somalia, where there were ramped up counterterrorism strikes against sworn enemies Al Shabaab and ISIS. Ironically, this is more routine and parallel to what his credentialed predecessors have done. But moving on to Syria, where there were more intervening measures in coordination with the Jordanian military targeting the Islamic State in retaliation for American casualties in the region. Justifiable? I guess, but what happened to peace talks? Then there's Nigeria, and unbeknownst to the public and unauthorized by Congress, Another military operation against sworn enemies of Christianity led to a joint attack against an Islamic State group with the Nigerian government. Now, how were we the last to know about this? And then there's Iran. Now, to be fair, we did not start this conflict, but we did insert ourselves 12 days later, declared victory, only to be in a current stalemate over the Strait of Hormuz, amongst other things at this point. Only for Peter Piper to be currently defending the request for more funding for this conflict. Whole time I thought we won. Now, before I land my plane, I just want to share one more quote from good old Pete's opening statement at his confirmation hearing, where he stated, "My only special interest is the warfighter, deterring wars and, if called upon, winning wars by ensuring warriors never enter a fair fight. We let them win and then bring them home." When Trump utilized Executive Order 14347 to restore the Department of War from the Department of Defense, that should serve as the smoking gun. And there you have it. These are the most powerful, unqualified people in the history of human governance. They were chosen that way on purpose by someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Now, this is either reassuring or the most frightening things we've said so far, because we are not here to attack politically, just to conduct an honest audit. So there's your tour of the cabinet. What do you think? Is it giving spicy? Grab your popcorn. I have mine. Your anchor here, still holding you down through the storm. Stay hydrated and share that hydration with your produce. I hear there's a parasite on the loose. Good night.
Trump turd, Jummy Springs, and ain't shit we can do about it. Shit for brains, so take a seat so we can talk about it.